Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. For the sake of having everybody on board, because I can see a bunch of folks still joining, let's start in a minute or so after everybody arrives. So stay tuned. We are going to start in a minute. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much for your time. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everybody who joined today's Test Studio R3 2020 release webinar. We just had a new version release as we speak, happened a few hours ago. Our latest major version release for this year with the main topic and theme of blazing fast test recording. Stay tuned to see what it is about and some performance optimization. Who are the presenters today? The usual suspect is Mr. Andy Wayland, who is a solutions architect for the testing division in Progress Telerik, and myself, Peter. I'm a sales engineer under Andy's team. A few notes about the infrastructure and the housekeeping of the webinar. Today's session is recorded, right? So don't worry, after the session, you'll get notification about how to access this recording. If you need it, all of you guys are muted. It means that we can't hear you. However, you can use our questions panel to ask or comment on everything you would be interested in too. And talking about that, you would also see a little hand icon on your GoToWebinar panels, and I will kindly ask you to press this hand icon right now so I can make sure that you guys hear me well and see the slides on the screen. All right, I see a bunch of hands raised. Now, thank you very much for that. I assume everything is fine with the logistics of this webinar, so we can proceed further. What's the agenda today? We're going to have a quick release overview, and then we're going to focus on each of the new features that are part of this R3 2020 release for Test Studio, so you can see what's new and that blazing fast. Right. After that, my colleague Andy will present to you the new features in terms of by means of a quick interactive demo of the tool. And right after, this is something that we're going to do for the first time. We'll have a secret, mysterious feature announcement, right? By the end of this webinar, we're going to allocate a few minutes for a questions and answers session, so we can address out loud some of your interesting questions that you might have. Right. In the meantime, do not hesitate, however, to use your questions panel to communicate with the Test Studio team, who is actually here with me right now behind the microphone and the camera. So they are on standby to answer all of your questions and concerns during the entire webinar. Right. So feel free to shoot us with questions. And as you may already know, for the seasoned attendees, throughout this session, we're going to launch 3 poll questions ad hoc during the webinar. So we will give you up to 1 minute to share your feedback on those questions, which is going to be extremely useful for us and the product team in particular. As you know, we value customer feedback really a lot. One additional slide about this surprise I was talking about. This is something that we are doing and I'm doing for the first time, actually, right? There is going to be a feature announcement, which is not part of the agenda today, but it is part of the official release. So for anybody who hasn't downloaded the new version yet, stay tuned to see what it is about. And of course, we're going to have a very, very quick demo about it towards the end of the presentation. And this said, before we start, I would like to fire up the first poll question here. Do share your feedback with us. It is much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. The poll is close now. The question was, which failures are you dealing with most often? And it's not a big surprise that the majority of you answered that bugs getting into production is the main pain here. And by the way, constantly updating tests is also getting quite some traction in answers, almost getting on par with bugs getting into production. And the third place for the statistics was not achieving agility. All right, thank you very much for this. Now we go back to the agenda, and for the ones of you who are actually first-time attendees, first-time users of Test Studio, let me share with you in a nutshell what the tool is about. So this is Telerik offering for, as you can see here on the first line with a little bit of a wink, for full codeless and or coded via C# or VB.NET, UI automated tests creation via two editions, the standalone edition of the tool or the Visual Studio plugin. Right? Test Studio offers full web UI functional cross-browser automation, supporting the most popular browsers out there. With regards to the desktop applications, we have full support for WPF technologies. On top of that, you can create and automate your responsive web applications on every screen size. On top of that, you can add load and performance testing, including testing of your RESTful APIs. Right? Test Studio offers complete integration with one of the most popular solutions for CI and CD out there in order to support your continuous testing processes. Actually, how Test Studio works here, we have a patent pending hybrid element detection, which is based on both mix of the corresponding element attributes and their images. And of course, you can give priority to each of those. Last and not least, after you have created and recorded your automation tests, you can schedule them for local or remote execution and monitor the results with the corresponding tools and dashboard and reporting features that we offer. Right. As far as the technologies supported out there, you can see that we cover everything from the good old ASP.NET tech with the web forms or Ajax and MVC, right? Including, by the way, Silverlight. Yes, Telerik as a company still supports the UI components for Silverlight. We also support Silverlight testing yet, but going through the more contemporary HTML5 for jQuery applications, reaching up to the new cool kids on the block like Blazor, Angular, React, Vue, etc. Right, and of course, Test Studio is the only official UI testing tool with support for our own UI components as well, on top of those different technologies that you can see. This is my favorite slide, by the way, from the entire stack. In reality, we're really trying to, and doing, of course, bringing together everyone on the Agile DevOps table. So this happens first via the different editions of Test Studio that we offer, which I mentioned at the beginning. So whether you are the developer or the technical guy who is helping your QA team by creating some helper class files or diving deeper into the code a bit, yes, you can use our Visual Studio plugin, or you are the main stakeholder, the QA, the business analyst, for example, who is using the standalone version of Test Studio. You guys can still communicate to each other. All of this happens on top of our source control integration, whether it's going to be TFS, Azure DevOps, or Git. For example, the information can be constantly shared and updated between the different stakeholders. You can submit your bugs through several environments with which we have a direct integration, like again TFS and Azure DevOps, but also Jira servers, and you can have your pipelines, CI/CD pipelines, generate and trigger those tests that you have created automatically whenever you have a release or a build scheduled into the CI/CD Pipe, again, thanks to our integration with solutions like Jenkins, Bamboo, TeamCity, Azure DevOps, etc. And last but not least, Test Studio is built on top of Feedware. Sorry for the ones of you who are familiar with Feedware, which is also a Telerik product. It lives under the hood. Feedware Core lives under the hood of Test Studio and helps a bunch with regards to doing vault testing, for example. And let's not forget the managers. They also have a seat on this Agile DevOps table, as we have several interactive dashboards which you can share within or outside your team and monitor the overall health of your testing projects. Right, enough for that with overview. Let's focus on the actual release and the main highlights. Here I have separated them into 4 chunks here. First and foremost, we have the Test Studio Recorder, totally redesigned. You won't be able to recognize the recorder. Believe me, you're going to see it during the demo. It looks totally different now, but it allows you to create tests much faster and decreases the necessity of having any coded skills, thus bringing your technical debt almost to zero. For example, we had to change our recorder because we're aiming at the bigger step of constantly improving our user experience. Now you're going to see that on your screen with the new recorder. You have much more real estate, so you can focus on some other complex tasks like image detection or OCR image verification. Remember, we just released a few iterations ago OCR image detection, where you can extract data from images, and in order to do this completely fluent, you need to have a bunch of real estate on your screen. So these changes, this UX and UI changes, naturally leads to a performance optimization that we are doing, and now our UI becomes even more intuitive, aiming for the best productivity boost with almost no maintenance cost, right? Last but not least, we have improved our Blazor translators, adding a bunch of new ones and improving the existing ones, like the grid, for example. Right. I have prepared one a little odd slide here, if I might say, which, by the way, unfortunately for me, is not a sponsored ad. But I would like to talk a little bit about what actually faster or the fastest recorder out there. I mean, so if you take a careful look across those 2 line of products, you would all know that, for example, this guy over here on the left, when it was released, it had the fastest Bionic chip processor inside of it. And the same was valid for this guy, and the same was valid for this guy, and the same is valid currently for these guys here. Or even a better example I can give you with these car manufacturers. Those beasts from the 80s, which you see here in the middle, the screen, were extremely fast. So, but time changed, right? The user experience changes, the UI needs to change, needs to adapt to the corresponding time, right? Hence, this is the constant effort for changing and enhancing your UX, which results in a better UI. Or this said, no matter what changes, the changes are always currently the par excellence. They're always contemporary, up to date, and user-friendly. Right. Okay, here is a screenshot of how our new blazing fast Text Studio recorder looks like. As you can see, first and foremost, it just takes a small portion of the screen with being oriented horizontally or vertically. It's up to you to decide how to position it, and you can move it freely to any part of your screen so that you can have the rest of the real estate for you. It is totally detached from the browser now, if you compare it with the previous versions of the Text Studio Recorder, which was at the bottom, attached to the browser. Of course, takes just a small portion of the screen, as we discussed. It's organized into, it's a toolbar which is organized into tabs, right? All of them are clickable. My colleague Andy is going to show you during the demonstration how they work and what options they bring up. And talking about option, by the way, we have optimized our highlighter functions, first focusing on the mostly needed actions, and then added a bunch of other cool actions which were not part of the recorder previously, but had to be accessed separately into the tool, right? Like, for example, the creation of some advanced step builder, which you now have on top of your mouse and keyboard when recording tests with the Text Studio new recorder. What are its benefits? Talking about the benefits here, now you have the ability to create quite easy, if not the easiest on one side, but on the other side, the most comprehensive automation tests via record and playback experience only, right? At this moment, at this time, you don't need any advanced coding skills to achieve that. Like that, you can focus on supporting and creating of such codeless tests much quicker with less obstacles, so that you don't have to sacrifice your stability and reliability of the current testing projects, which ultimately, again, saves you time and decreases quality. All right, I had a chance to take a look at one very interesting article from Foresters from this a month where the guys were talking about the so-called multi-type testing experience notion. By the way, that's why I decided to add it into this the presentation. The way they described this multi-type testing experience is that it enables the different team roles within your organization to test in such a case that they compensate for the lack of highly technically skilled or developers skilled capacity for the tests themselves, while they don't sacrifice the project productivity and collaboration. And it really makes a lot of sense when you dig into that and see it working with the new version of Text Studio. Or else said, the whole idea here is that you can now save time not only due to automation, but also while doing this automation. So we bring up the time saving one step further. Now, again, without sacrificing quality of the project. Another interesting slide that I wanted to quickly discuss and with you guys and talk about is the always ongoing balance between the codeless and coded approach. First, as a disclaimer, we support both of these options. The codeless point-and-click recorder, of course, but if you want to add some coded steps via C# or VB.NET, we won't stop you from doing that. You can do it. But what people ask, why should we bother with the so-called codeless testing? Well, first and foremost, it allows a very easy and quick onboarding with the world of automation, automated testing itself. which means that it supports the less experienced QA engineers who have little or no coding skills or any previous automation framework experiences. And like that, you can deliver value to your team, to your organization from the very first day, right? Without having to walk the path of a very steep technical learning curve, for example. And like that, the entire UI testing end-to-end process can mimic the actual behavior of your end customers who are going to use your applications. This is actually how we fully support the test engineer journey. Here, you can, TestStudio allows you to have a full transition from manual to automated testing with a bunch of features like the cross-browser support, with now much easier to use and feature-rich test recorder, and with the updated user experience with as a result of the redesigned UI. And exactly this new sleek design and optimized performance of TestStudio become an integrated part, of the entire test automation workflow. So it is available to have, it's possible, to have easy utilization of all those TestStudio productivity boosting features without taking, in our case with the recorder, additional screen space, for example. Right. As you know, as a conclusion, the entire journey to a reliable automation testing can come with many hurdles, different types of them, which prevents you from getting an immediate benefit from automation. But with such changes and enhancements and optimizations, you can overcome such hurdles. Right. And this said, guys, let's make a quick pause here, fire up the second poll question, and we'll continue in a minute or so. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. The poll is now closed, and you can see the results on your screen. Every second answer of the question, how do you currently test, was the manual approach. And I'm also happy to see that 30% of you guys are existing TestStudio users, so you can see those new features, and I urge you to update your versions as soon as possible to take advantage of these performance optimizations that we added. All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to continue with the slides. The next big chunk that we released with this version were so-called new and enhanced translators for Telerik UI for Blazor. A few words about what actually those translators are. So think of them as built-in, ready-to-use and native extensions which open up a specific element from your application to work with Test Studio in a more advanced mode. Right, it can allow you to do with just a click or two very advanced automated scenarios or verifications, for example, which on its side, of course, again, leads and brings you one step closer to the truly codeless UI test automation experience, which again, on its turn, boosts your productivity, especially if you're dealing with component-based application development. Right. Or to give you a specific example, you can see this little portion of grid on your screens, Telerik UI for Blazor grid. With the help of those translators, you can just with a click after the element is recognized by Test Studio, you can just with a click verify that the entire grid is sorted, or that you have 5 entries in the grid, or if they are grouped by some criterion, or if they are not grouped like in the example here, right? This is actually what changed. We added those grouping, sorting, and expand collapse verification for the Blazor grid. We added verifications for the content by text and index for our text boxes and combo boxes. We added quick verification if your window component is minimized, maximized, or resized, for example. And we added brand new translators for the following components, which are part of the Telerik UI for Blazor stack, which are the drawer, the list view, the tab strip component, the multi-select component, and the animation container component. For the seasoned Test Studio users, those translators are activated from the settings of the tool. So make sure if you're using Telerik UI for Blazor to always keep those translators open, or if you're using some other tech like Angular or jQuery or WPF, we also have translators, which it's always recommended to keep switched on from the settings. But our main focus today is for the new Blazor translators. So what are the benefits of having those translators? First, you can facilitate and optimize the UI testing very quickly of your Blazor apps, which again leads to the stronger approach towards UI automation of component-based apps. And last but not least, it brings you one step further with extended support for the Telerik UI for Blazor components without any additional headaches and efforts. All right, thank you very much for that. With that said, I'm going to switch to my colleague Andy, who is going to do a quick interactive demo of the new recorder of Test Studio.
Awesome, thank you so much, Peter. Just a moment here, I'll have my screen up for you. And thank you so much, Peter, for going through all that. I get the privilege of being able to show you what Peter has told us all about. Peter, can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Great. So here we are. I'm jumping just straight into the middle of the Blazor translators, since that's the hottest topic we were just discussing. And then I'm going to take you through more of this new recorder and the Test Studio technique. So as you can see, this is actually our Blazor grid. I have the new recorder here in a live record mode. And just wanted to show real quick the example of what Peter had in the screenshots, in real time, basically. So here you can see when I pause on a particular cell of this grid, it can extrapolate the layers with the cell, the row, the table, and the grid layer there. And all of these, with the quick steps, give you so many different functions. As Peter mentioned, you're able to verify a lot of the settings of the grids without even having to exercise them. Okay, so things like, is it groupable? Is it sorted? stuff like that, we can very quickly and easily add those steps. So that's really where you'll see the translators in action. And this is, again, using the element highlighter. You can toggle on here in the toolbar. And I'm going to show you more on how to use that. But as you can see, now I've turned it off. We're back in sort of the regular mode. But we'll come back and see that here in a moment. Also, as you can see, I do have Test Studio. This is the same project, by the way, up in Visual Studio. This is the Visual Studio Test Studio Dev Edition, as it's called. As you see, all of the same capabilities we're going to demonstrate for you in the standalone environment are also available in the Visual Studio plugin too. So here we are. I'm just starting up a brand new test here, just to show you the one thing I did before project, and I did add web test. You'll notice too, if you haven't seen Test Studio or heard of Test Studio for a while, we did also add responsive web testing for your responsive web apps, and really cool capability to be able to run tests against on the simulated devices within the browsers, and that way you can really make sure that your application works both on a phone and as well as in the desktop browser. But all I did so far in this particular case was add a web test. As I mentioned too, this is the same project that I was just accessing from Visual Studio. I'm managing this project in source control via the Azure DevOps service. And we do have support for legacy TFS back to 2008 and newer, as well as for Git. So that way you can source your project in the cloud, keep everybody on the same page, and keep things up to date. So I'm going to start a brand new test here. I've just opened up the blank test. I'm going to hit record. And then here we're presented with an option of which browser we want to record in. Test Studio's tests are cross-browser compatible. That means you don't have to have a Firefox version of the test and an IE version of the test and a Chrome version of the test. It's all one test, right? Our tests are made to be cross-browser compatible, and a lot of that comes by way of the patent-pending ability to locate elements by their logic as well as by their image. So I'm going to just jump into Firefox here. We're going to pick on a website that pretty much everybody's familiar with, hopefully. And it's also one that presents extra challenges, as many of these types of heavily used applications have so many things that are constantly loading and refreshing. There's just a lot of complexity. So it's a great example to show you. And I'm doing it on Firefox, which some application testing tools struggle with that. But it doesn't matter which browser I pick, Test Studio does works splendidly on all of them. Here in the background, we see that it is capturing the steps. So you basically hit record, you give it a site to navigate to, and at this point, we're in the live record mode. So what I'll do is just start using it like a real user would. And you can see that it captures for me this text entry step. I'll click submit. And very quickly, we already have a bit of a test coming together. Now this new recorder, as Peter mentioned, it's all about speed, optimization, as well as making sure it can get out of your way. We didn't want the recorder to interfere with the application. We wanted it to be here in a place, wherever you want to put it, wherever it makes sense. And you can move it around and you can position it either horizontally or vertically as well with just a click of a button. And it's just so much more flexible and more compact. I would like to say even elegant and simple, and that's the way the best software is, right? So that's out of our way, but it's certainly not forgotten, right? There's a lot of functionality here. We can easily pause the recorder if maybe we want to go interact with the application without capturing something. So easily enough here, we'll jump around a little bit and come back, and no additional steps are recorded until I go hit record. So this allows you to really work in your test, troubleshoot, maybe even go back. Maybe if we wanted to add a step here and to show off another function that Peter mentioned, I'm gonna actually add a new step right after step one, right after we navigate to Amazon. And I'm gonna use this toolbar and this element highlighter to do that. So the element highlighter, it toggles on here, and it's a very important part of test creation and test maintenance. A test needs to have verifications to prove whether it's succeeded or not. In this example so far, I go to Amazon, I look for drones, and I click submit. There's no proof that I actually made it, that I actually got the results that I needed. So verifications are going to help us do that. I'm going to add one for drone here in a minute, but before I do that, I'm going to show off our new OCR capabilities that we had in our last major release. And I'm going to use this Amazon logo to do that. So in the new recorder, as you're recording here, you go through the actions like a user to capture those. And now I get to a point where I want to add some kind of verification. I'm going to use this locate DOM function. And this allows me to see where it's listed here. Also, I can kind of click around if I'm looking for different layers of the element. But I'll use this nav logo there. And actually, no, we'll go to the next one down there. And then from here, in the new recorder, you can see that we've got common steps built in here. This is where you may want to add, a check for JavaScript errors, or if you wanted to, put in execution delay or something like that. Very easy to add that directly from there. If I jump over to the element steps, you have a list of verifications and a list of actions. You can make very, very sophisticated element to element drag and drop steps with the drag and drop features. Also, things that may be hard to record traditionally, like a hover over. This is where you can come and actually add that type of step to your test, as well as many, many other things. For this example, I'm going to jump back to verifications, and I'm going to use our text from image. So this is our new OCR functionality. Here you can see that it's brought that image in, and in a nice, easy format. I can see all the settings around this feature. You can see that there's an option to do OCR for the entire image, which in this case, when I click extract text, it will actually extract Amazon, and then it tries to make something out of the arrow though. So if I don't want that arrow to be involved, I can actually uncheck this and maybe just draw the box around the word part of it, right? And then do my OCR. And so this shows you just how smooth and easy it is to manipulate and work with this. You can also modify your compare type as it goes as well, and basically reach into those images that used to maybe not be as testable, and now they are, right? So we'll go ahead and add that step as I mentioned, and as easily as it can be, you can go in and insert steps. Oops, it looks like I did accidentally keep that @ on there. Maybe I'll just trim that from here. As you can see, easy to go in and edit that step even after the fact, right? So coming back to my test scenario, we navigated, we're checking on that image. We're making sure it says Amazon up there. We're gonna add the, enter drones into the search field to click submit. And here you're also seeing down below that each of the images that are captured during the recording process as well. Nice clean image of that magnifying glass. It's also storing that here in the element listing. And that element list, it will point to the element for your step. All you really have to do is record. It's going to capture all that stuff for you. Okay, so to make this test even better, I'm going to actually just jump back out of the advanced recording toolbar there and come back to the UI and add this other verification to make sure that we actually got to drones, right? So the usage of Test Studio and the way this toolbar and this highlighter works, you really can combine a lot, right? You actually can type something, record some steps, jump around, turn on the element highlighter, add a verification, turn it back off. And that's a real common way to build your tests, right? Another great feature of Test Studio is the ability to stay in the moment. So rather than having to restart everything over again, I'll just reuse the same browser session and we'll do a run from here. You can also do run selected or run to a certain spot. And this, to one of the questions I saw earlier in the question panel, is really what helps you easily update and maintain these tests. So when we talk about not adding technical debt, well, here's a test that's actually got no code in it. Certainly we can code if we want to. We can convert things to code too, but it's super easy to create, to work with these test steps and build out some very robust tests, right? So here you can see it executing back. I also have annotation turned on, so it's actually slowing down the playback a little bit. Normal playback's going to go faster than that. There was a question about timing. We have a lot of timing components built into Test Studio. You can see back here, it did pass all 5 of those steps, but we do have timing to wait on elements, and this uses timeouts. That way, if it finds the element more quickly, it will go ahead and move forward, right? Now, in addition here, there's timing within the test steps itself. Maybe we want to switch from a 15-second wait on elements to a 30-second. We can check a checkbox and we're there. We can further customize this if we need to as well. So now I'm 40 seconds for this particular step. And also to one of the questions out there, Ajax timeout. This is used when you have those async calls that need time to come back with the list of results. So in your type ahead fields, as you're typing something and it's trying to give you suggestions, those kind of calls sometimes might need time, right? Or in the question that was asked earlier, for cascading drop downs, if I'm going to select a state in one drop down and a city in another, I'm going to use Ajax timeout to make sure that my city list has time to populate after the state is selected. Okay, so that's time in between to make sure that those async calls have time to come back. And that's the kind of stuff that you can do. I mean, Test Studio has so many features and properties and abilities that we've surfaced in a way of making them into checkboxes. For example, encrypting a password is a simple checkbox rather than code and stuff like that. So here's just a ton of different things that you can do to create your tests. And also in a manner of reuse, we like to build modular tests. So I actually have another little piece of test here that's going to continue my Amazon by adding an item to the cart and then actually deleting it. Well, I can actually come from this new test I've created and using what we call test to step. You also see there's an API test to step using our API testing, but this is going to allow me to go grab any of the tests in my project already. You can see there's also a CRUD example in here where there's a create subtest, an update subtest, a delete subtest. So this means you can modularize your tests and call them from one another, right? So let's go ahead and find my add to cart, delete from cart. And here I actually now have a dynamic call to go execute this test. So I'm not duplicating anything, simply reusing it, right? So we'll go ahead and have this run again, still in that live record session. So I'll just have it run from here and we'll see if it goes on further. So as you can see, this new recorder is very compact, clean, and it's quick. Now you can really record your tests even more quickly and hopefully get to those tools that you need to make sure your tests are robust. And what we call kind of making your tests more bulletproof is by using that element highlighter, adding those verifications, and when you need to, going into those advanced tools and using things like OCR or drag and drop, or if you want to look at maybe cosmetic verifications, things like that. So we're going to see if the test I made earlier now dovetails into the test that you watched me create. And here we can see it is going further into that next subtest. And it looks like it's going to try to add it to the cart. And here in a moment, once this wraps up, I'm going to pass the mic back to Peter so he can cover that last mystery feature as well. So stay tuned for that. But this hopefully shows you just a very small example of the power of Test Studio on a very complex application. This is just scratching the surface. I mean, there's so much that you can do either with code or without, but keep in mind that a lot of our customers like to use Test Studio to reduce the code, reduce the burden on the development team, and to bring all of those manual testers up to the speed of agility, right? To be able to continue doing what we know as manual testers, being able to continue to do those workflows and those scenarios through automation now, which allows us to stay up to date and up to the cycle time that we need. We did get one little failure in there, it looks like, so I can just take a quick look just to show you how much data you get from a failure. And this tells me that it was not, oh, I know what it was. There's a coverage. Sometimes a little thing comes up and says, hey, do you want to buy some insurance on your item? It didn't find that element since it didn't show up. And actually we can see the images here, the expected state. I don't know why, but this doesn't always show up for every item. And this time it didn't. So it says it couldn't find that element, which is totally justifiable. That image, those images help me understand what was going on, what was expected and what happened. The complete test log is all the steps to reproduce the issue, the browser and version, the timing, so much data here. And of course, the page DOM at the point of failure too. And this can be easily submitted directly into my bug tracking system so that my development team is aware of this bug I found and with all of the data they need to go start fixing that issue. So you have a feedback loop built in. Not only is it capturing all that information for you, but it's making it easy for you to communicate it. All right, I will hand it back to Peter. Thanks for the time and thanks for taking a look at our new features. Peter, take it away.
Thank you very much, Andy, for this lovely demo of Test Studio, and thank you, by the way, for addressing some of the interesting questions in the panel that we had. It was quite useful. Now let's proceed, guys, with the last portion of today's webinar. But before that, before I share my screen, I would really appreciate if you answer the last poll that we have today, which is now open in front of you. And it asks to imagine your team could cut regression testing in half. How would that impact your delivery cycle? A bunch of interesting questions, answers that we have. Almost everything is on par between the first three options, but let's see how we go towards the end. And it seems that we already have a clear winner, that the team will deliver faster and with improved performance. All right, thank you very much. It was the last poll. We do really appreciate such feedback that we get from our community. And for this, our community, for addressing some of the most requested features, but not only that, of course, we have introduced a brand new stuff for you with this release. We're opening the so-awaited mystery box now, and you might already got the hints based on the slides we had before that, right? I know you're quality assurance guys, you pay attention to details, right? But still, the idea, and tell me how many of you would really love to use their browsers or their IDEs or their chat tools in such layouts, or maybe use that kind of accessories and amenities in such layout. I have added, by the way, here two of my other favorite stuff, which again is not sponsored at for sure. So you already know that what was introduced with the Test Studio R3 2020 was a dark theme, right? With this release, now you are able to switch between two themes, white and dark. In Test Studio, just a quick note, it happens from settings. I'm going to show you. In order for the theme to be applied, you need to restart your tool first. Such dark theme is available into the Test Studio standalone edition, including the new and enhanced recorder, of course, but also is included into the Visual Studio plugin. This is what I mentioned, that was one of the highest requested features, because as you already know, up until now, we had a very seamless integration with Visual Studio. And by the way, I saw a question in the panel from one of our attendees asking what is exactly the difference between Test Studio Dev Edition and Test Studio Edition. The Test Studio Dev Edition is a plugin, a Test Studio plugin which is made exclusively for Visual Studio. It lives within Visual Studio IDE. You don't need to switch context. You don't need to switch environments in order to record or execute your tests. All of this happens within within Visual Studio, right? And as I said, up until now, we had this seamless integration, but now by introducing the dark theme, we also have a complete optical integration for the ones of you who prefer using Visual Studio in dark mode, right? I'm going to switch to a virtual machine that I have with an already fired up instance of Visual Studio. And as you can see on your screens, literally you cannot say that at the moment you are within Visual Studio, but actually you are using Test Studio, right? Here is my Solution Explorer where my testing project is already. I can very easily add a new web or desktop test or create a test list for later execution. And the way now this test looks and feels is on par with all of the visuals of Visual Studio here. All right. So with this set, I think we're just up to the hour. We have a few more minutes, which we would like to allocate now for Q&A session. We can answer, by the way, we're not going to shut down the webinar. We will continue answering your questions in the chat up until everything is addressed. Also, me and my colleagues will take a look at some of the outstanding questions and read some of the interesting out loud and try to answer them as well. Just note as closing words here for this webinar, you are really in good hands. The way we organize our support for each of our product offerings from Telerik is that we don't outsource the support, so that the team that develops the actual tool is the one responsible for the support. So you always get first-hand support experience. There we have a lot of online training, video documentations, blog posts, and forums where we communicate with our community. We also offer professional services for training, mentoring, and consulting for your projects. The way Test Studio releases happen, as the seasoned users already know, we have a few major and minor releases throughout the year, dispersed every 4 to 8 weeks, including the early compatibility ones. All right. Thank you very much for that. Let me take a look at the questions panel now and see if something interesting pops up.
Yep. And just to jump into, I saw there was a question about accessing training videos. We do have the Telerik virtual classroom. You can get to it through the telerik.com site, and there are some new Test Studio training courses in there. They're free video courses. And as Peter also mentioned, there's some new training offerings as well that are with the trainer, a live trainer. So there's a lot of different options. But great questions, and we do have some great YouTube, videos out there as well.
All right, thank you, Andy. I see a question here which is quite relevant for the topic of the webinar. Do I need to input some effort while upgrading to the new version? Out of the box, no, it's a straightforward process where you have to download the new version just for the sake of having everything secure. We do back up your data in case something happens, but upgrade is just a straightforward process. So just follow the instructions on screen for that. Right.
Another one I saw was about, do we have the ability to add a data source to use, an outside data source to fill out a form? And yes, that is very easy to do. In fact, to work with Excel or XML or even a live database that's connected to the Test Studio project, you can use that to data drive text entry. You can data drive verifications, and you can even data drive the element find logic as well. Among other things, there's even more. You can data drive, I think, annotations and URLs. So yes, absolutely. And it doesn't require code to be able to do that.
Yep, we had a lot of customer feedback and requests here in the questions panel, which I see, which I think our product owner will be happy to answer and address. Also, I see a question about which properties or locators is best suited to select can do grid multiple entries. So remember, we were discussing those translators right at the moment, at the beginning, part of the stack for Blazor. We do offer translators for other stack of controls, including can do for Angular, for example, or jQuery. So if you're using such grid, do make sure that your translators are switched on in order to ease your life with automating this grid. And a very quick question, what is the runtime license? Here, the runtime license is a separate edition of Test Studio, which allows you to distribute and do kind of a load balancing of your tests so that they're executed among different machines. Let's say you have 100 tests and you want to run 50 tests at a time, so you can distribute those 50 tests on 2 machines with the help of the runtimes, so you can cut your execution speed into execution time, sorry, into half with the help of the runtime. All right, let me see. In the meantime, as I said, we're continuing to answer the questions, so stay tuned. We're not going to close the webinar yet until we answer.
Another one that popped up is for loops. We do have some, and that actually it's a good example for the failure I ran into, where the insurance screen sometimes shows up, sometimes doesn't. It's kind of not predictable, or at least I don't know Amazon well enough to know when it's going to show up or not. I could actually encapsulate that in an if else, and Test Studio allows you to do conditional logic like while loop, loops, and if else. No code required for those. Basically, it runs off of a verification that says if the insurance request comes up, click yes, else move on without it, right? So that way that test could have still succeeded with that conditional logic built in. Great questions.
By the way, here, Andy, I see one of your favorite questions. One of our attendees asks if we support XPath while editing web element locators. So maybe you can share a few words. I know it's a favorite topic for you.
We do support XPath, but I would challenge you to consider the robust abilities that Test Studio has to provide many, many better options than XPath. We are not built on Selenium. We have our own proprietary framework, and it's very robust. Could you use XPath? Yes, it is in there as one of the options, but it's usually at the bottom of the list because it's a weaker option, and there's many other options that are better. You may be considering that in dynamic situations like grids and things that you might be stuck with the XPath, and contrary to that belief, Test Studio has the ability to go identify grids and then rows and then cells without any paths, without any indexes, in a really, really robust way. So yes, but no. Thanks, but no thanks, right?
Yeah, exactly. We just had a question from one of the attendees. Is it possible to share the results, the command line, share with dashboard? Yeah, remember when we were talking about that everybody has a seat on the Agile DevOps table? We do have a built-in application within Test Studio, a web interactive dashboard, which can be shared within or outside your organization without the necessity of having an additional license for Test Studio. And this dashboard, interactive dashboard, executive dashboard, allows you to see the latest 10 runs of your test lists, scheduled test lists, and of course you can drill down further in order to see the exact run, the exact test list, the exact test that was part of this test list, and the exact problem that made it fail if it's a failing test list, right? And of course you can create custom reports and share them outside thanks to this executive dashboard. I also see a quick question. Do you support performance testing? Yeah, apart from UI testing automation, we do have performance, load, and RESTful API testing features. Ping us if you need more details on that. We'll be happy to share with you. I see another one. How do you deal with modal dialogues, or does it care at all whether it's a modal dialogue or not? Yep, we do. When you create a test and you have access to this advanced step builder, from where you can very quickly create a step that handles different type of dialogues, pop-ups, or even a generic one, which automatically recognizes the dialogue of your application. And if you have a modal dialogue, yes, we have such an option to check for modal dialogues or not as well. Okay. What else do we have here? Let's see.
There was one for which properties are locators best suited to select a Kendo grid. This is, as I've discussed, where you can actually in Test Studio find elements in a grid by potentially their content. If there's some reliable content in a particular row of a grid, Test Studio has the ability to target that. And this way, as the grid sorted, filtered, it doesn't matter what position that row ends up in, Test Studio would still be able to go find that row and interact with that particular row. So that's really why we don't have to use the paths or the indexes. Those are way brittle, but the fine logic capabilities of Test Studio allow you to target those, those rows and things in a dynamic way.
Yeah, it was a very good question. I'm very happy, by the way, that so many questions pop up right now. For example, we just had one of our attendees ask, can we record more sections that can be reused in other tests? Yep, actually, this is one of the main ideas. Remember to save time, not only by doing automation, but while doing automation. It's the notion of test step. I think we got it covered during the demo that Andy did for you. Basically, how it works, you can reuse every existing test within your project as a subtest of another test, right? Meaning that if something changes on the subtest, you just need to edit it once, and it will automatically be applied everywhere this subtest is used, thus cutting maintenance costs and so, right? Can we record? Okay, will this new application allow for auto launch and run as part of auto build, auto deploy, auto test? Try it. Yep, if you're using a CI/CD approach for your app development, you can, depending on the type of environment you're using, we have integration with some of the most popular ones. But basically, the way it works, while it's different for for the different solutions, but the way it works in general is that with the help of the Test Studio runtime, you basically attach running agent, which is hooked and triggered whenever you have a pipe, right? So that when you have a build or release in your pipeline, the test lists are automatically triggered, executed, and you got the results afterwards, right? Okay.
One last quick one
Yeah.
here. There was a really good comment. Thanks, Pamela. She likes what she's seeing and looking to do a proof of concepts. I did want to point out, indeed, we do have a trial you can download and try out Test Studio on your application. We have some solution consultants standing by to help you. You know, if you need help, usually it's the first few tests that tend to be the hardest. Don't give up. Failure is only one step towards success. So, you know, reach out, get a trial, and feel free to reach out to us, or you know, by getting a trial, you may hear from one of our reps. And please feel free to use them and ask questions, and we can set up calls and sessions to help you with your proof of concept as well.
Exactly. We're here to help. Stephen has a question: what are the recommended workstation capabilities, or can I find that on the site somewhere? Yeah, absolutely. You can find it. It's within the Test Studio portion of Telerik.com, but the easiest way is just to type into Google Test Studio system requirements, and they will pop up with on the first result on the page, so you can see what type of environment you need in order to use our tool, right? The questions continue, by the way. I'm very happy, to be honest. Now we just have 5 new ones. Let me see what we can share here. Rick is impressed with both this demo and the product. Thank you very much for your kind words for that. And in a WPF grid, can I search a specific row by given the text of the column and double click on it? Yeah, absolutely. You can do that no matter if you're using Telerik UI for WPF. If you are using it, will happen out of the box thanks to our translators. If not, you can cover this scenario with the element highlighter from the recorder, which you saw on the demo, or with the advanced step builder for that.
Great questions. And I think we've got word from the team that we'll be able to follow up with any unanswered questions via email. We know we're a little long, so we'll probably need to wrap this one up for today, but really great interaction, great to hear from some familiar faces as well, and really great feedback from everyone, it seems.
All right, cool. Remember, you're in good hands. Any questions, address to us, address to our support. You have full access to our support, no matter if you're a trial holder or not, and we are here to help you. Thank you very much one more time for having you today.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and have a nice remaining of your day, afternoon, or night.